Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Call to order the January 15, 2025 meeting of the trustees of trust funds. So first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of our December 19th meeting, copies of which were distributed to you.
I move to accept. I want to make one change.
Well, first, let me. Do I hear a second?
I'll second, put it on the floor.
Okay, now go ahead.
The vote on my opposition,
Yes.
I want it just to be recorded. It was because of lack of information on the amount of the checks. I don't want it, the minutes, the way they're worded, sound like I was opposed to
Okay.
the donations.
It was due to lack of information. Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I have I'll give you the language I have, but I want to make a correction to that same sentence. So right now, it says that we voted in favor of accepting any funds from the Portsmouth 400 in the future months, and I'd like that to read from the 400 before year end and before the trustees would have an opportunity to meet again, so those funds could be deposited directly. In other words, we weren't approving any funds coming at any time in the future. It was simply the monies that would come in before year end. And then on the two paragraphs down,
Yep.
where it says that the chair presented the trustees with a proposed draft of amendments
Yeah.
to the Horace Haven Metals Fund from the Portsmouth High School Group. I'm not sure what the Portsmouth High School Group is, so I would like that to read, the Haven Metals Fund received from Portsmouth High School,
Yep.
which would allow, so. Do you have any corrections or additions, Dana?
No. On the Horace Metals, is it coming from the high school or the superintendent's office?
Well, it's coming, we've been dealing with the college counselor, so I guess that's from the high school. Now, she's been in touch with the superintendent's office and
He's
the
reviewed
principal's
it.
office. I mean, we can,
No, I'm fine. I'm just curious.
well, we can,
The 4-page memo on that, who drafted that? Did you do that, Tom?
yes, and I'll explain when we get to that, yeah.
All right. I thought it might be your handiwork.
We can change Portsmouth High School to Portsmouth School Department if that makes you feel more accurate.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right, so make that change as well then.
All right.
All right, I will call the question in favor of approval of the minutes as so amended. We're going to have roll call. We'll start with you, Peter.
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
I did put Peter's comment in there.
That's all right. I've got Peter's comment.
All right, so the next item is the annual election of the chair.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Tom Watson to continue for another year.
I say for life. Do I hear a second?
A very affirmative second to that motion.
Okay. Do I hear any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll close the nominations and call the question. All in favor of electing Mr. Watson as chair for another year, please, we'll roll call. Start you, Peter.
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. All right, so next item are the scholarship awards.
Yeah, that's much better. Either that or I need another printer.
Give you a copy too, just so you can follow
Oh,
along.
sure. I still might not be able to see it without my extra readers.
Okay.
Actually, I think I forgot to
Hey,
put
you
my
want to
contact.
walk us
Sure.
through this?
Sure. So last year, for the 2024 school year, the trustees awarded $270,155 of scholarships. This year, the proposed amount that I am suggesting, based on any changes that you would like to make, is for $300,950. Based on, really the increases come from the Mortimer funds, because last year we started out low, but this year we have more that we're able to give. So that is where the real major increases are coming from. But there's also some wiggle room if you look at, and I'm looking at the suggested column because that's the amount that I'm looking at, and I'm also looking at the fourth column, the income available. A lot of the scholarships only want you to spend what's available for income and not touch the principal. So, running down that list, you can see like the Gray Scholarship, I've got 30,000. The Demerit Scholarship, there's 81,000 available. I bumped it up to 60, so you have some wiggle room if you want to give more. The Macintosh Scholarship is 50,000, and then the Bartlett Awards is set at the 1,200, 800 for the first prize and 400 for the second prize. Clarence Sherwood did not have any income this year because they had 2 awards go through at once. Somebody had held, so there's no income available to award this year. So next year, barring how the investment funds perform, we'll have to evaluate that one next year. That happens from time to time with some of these that are, that don't have as much funds in the income. Note that the McHale Scholarship is at 0, per what was agreed last year. She asked that we expend everything out, which was done. So I just listed it here so that you can see that there's no longer any funds available for that, and that fund will be closed out with the Attorney General in 2025, once everybody comes in for their money. The Leary Fund has 36,000 available. I bumped it up to 25 from 18 from last year. Mortimer has 19,000, almost 20,000 available, so I bumped it up to 18,000 from 9 last year. And then we get into the Marginson Fund is one of the few that's having us expend, and it's per the trust, the principal now. It was originally set up that we'd receive $2,500 annually from a donor, and that money would be given as an award. And then once they no longer are going to give in, which that has happened, then we start spending down the principal, and that's per the trust. So that's why it says 0, but we're giving $2,500, which is starting to expend the principal. And then Tony Ron is another one, kind of like the McHale, that we're spending down per their request, and that has already been approved by the Attorney General's office. So, we had a balance at 6/30 of 25,000, but we had another 10,000. We have 10,000 to be issued from that for 2024 because that's a second semester award. So we had to wait. So really, the balance available right now is 15,000, and I'm suggesting doing another 10 this year, and then if everything goes well, we'll close that one out next year per their request. And then you've got the second Mortimer, which has 17,000. I'm suggesting 15, which is a bump up from 6,000 from last year. The next awards that you can see, Ricci, Rappolt, Russ Wilson, Win Welsh Grand, BFW, and Nancy Roy are all set per the trusts. So those amounts, are the 1,000, and those are set amounts. And we have the new Alice and Thomas Flynn. That is based on income earned, and they, give out a $1,000 award once we get the income. They're not there yet. They only have $217 yet, so we're waiting for that to get up so that we can start awarding that one. So we're not there on that one yet. Then you have your community scholarships, and again, we could bump up arts or higher education if you want to, and that's kind of where we stand. So, I mean, it's an increase of almost $31,000 from last year that we're proposing to give this year. Whatever you want to look at or change, let me know.
The Mortimer Scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
Off the top of your head, do you remember how many awards were made last year? Because they can be...
Right. We awarded $6,000, so $6,000 of the $15,000 could be renewable.
Right.
Right, and that's why I bumped it up, knowing that. Same thing with the other one, which was 18,000. I bumped it up to 25, knowing that 18.
What other one you talking about?
The other Mortimer 1.
Yep, okay.
Okay. I did bump that one up. If you think it's too big of a bump up, we can take it down.
No, I don't think so because...
Everyone might not,
Yeah.
but yes, I do keep that in mind on those two because I know that that's one of the few ones that can be renewed. Correct.
So,
Yes.
Judy, just so I understand, that
Yes.
the bump up takes into account the already awarded renewable scholarships?
Yes, I'm going kind of with the assumption of, as a safeguard right now, that $6,000 that we awarded last year could be renewed this year, and then I'm adding in an additional 12 or whatever for new ones. Not all of them might be renewed, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that all of them technically could be renewed, so.
Yeah. So the school department
They're tracking that.
should make sure they don't take this award all in new money.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes, Brittany is well aware.
Well, and so is the captain.
Yeah. So they are. They're well aware that they might renew the captain. So.
Well, let me just ask a question
Yes.
relating to
Yeah.
the Macintosh.
Yep.
No, not Macintosh. I still need my glasses to read this. So on demerit, we have income of slightly over 81,000.
Correct.
And we're giving 60, and last year we gave 58. So
Right.
is it the 81 high because we had a particularly good year in the market, or have we traditionally?
The 81's high. There have been years, not last year, they pretty much gave out everything for demerit that, we've said you can give out 30,000 and they didn't have the need to give out 30,000. They only gave out 25. So that's had that creep up a little bit there. It is up to you. I mean, they've got a fair market value of over $3 million in that. So, I mean, but it really, as you know, it depends on what the market does. So, I certainly didn't want to go below what we gave last year, but I don't know. I was a little leery of bumping it all the way up to the 80, but that's totally up to you.
Judy, my suggestion, because we did get a big chunk of money this year that we didn't have last year. And last year, we gave 2.32%.
Correct.
And this year, even though we've got more money, we're only doing 2.23%.
Okay.
Without expecting you to do that today,
Yes.
I think we should give out at least the same percentage as we gave out last year.
All right, so that means I can I'll bump up the demerit, I'll bump up the Leary, because the Leary has room to be bumped up as well. You know, I can bump Leary up to 30,000, I can bump demerit up to try to get that percentage up, and I can also bump the Portsmouth Community Scholarships, the arts, the higher ed, and the athletics. If you're okay with that.
I'm curious about the comment you made in response to Tom on demerit.
Yes,
You said last year,
not last year, previous years. Sometimes they haven't expended all of the scholarship monies that they have, and that happens sometimes.
the schools did not award all the available.
It was a couple of years ago, yes, but it's you know, added to, you know, not all the income has been expended. So, you know, that's how that's crept up. Plus, it's got, you know, a $3 million fair market value. So, of course, that's earning more than one of the smaller scholarships. It has happened.
Does that ever happen with any of these other scholarships, that they don't expend all that's allocated?
No, I mean, they expend last year they expended everything. So in previous years, I can't remember which one, it might have been the Annie McIntosh, whichever one is, there's one for nursing or something, and they didn't have enough students that were going into nursing. So
Okay,
it depends.
the reason I ask is, as a follow-up to Peter's comment, John, I didn't want to increase the amount we give if they're not able to,
Yeah.
or for whatever reason,
Yeah.
be able to award you.
I have no doubt that they'll be able to award this. And if they don't end up expending it all, I will let you all know. You know, I'll get it in June and I'll know how much they award. But I'm sure that Brittany has candidates that, you know, with the economy the way it is and the cost of college, I'm sure they have more than enough candidates that they can get. They'll be able to give out bigger awards if they want to. So.
Okay. I'm inclined to want to raise some of these. I'm a little concerned about tying it into a percentage, because as you know, some of these are flat fees, and in a slow year, they're going to be above the 2.3%, and in a good year, they're below, but they're controlled because it's an exact sum to be given.
Yeah.
And so but I'm in favor of raising some of these, but I'd rather do it on a scholarship by scholarship basis
Okay.
instead of the rounding that I think you're suggesting, Peter.
Yeah, well, hopefully by doing that, we're going to be getting to the same percentages we did last year. I hate to see us,
assume it.
even though we got $500,000 more, that we end up giving less than we did last year.
Yeah, and I think that will be the outcome, but I'm
Yes.
just suggesting the approach ought to be.
So do you want to run through the ones where we have wiggle room that you just make
Well, so
suggestions?
the one that started my comments was demerit,
Right.
because, you know, there's a $21,000 delta there that I
Right.
think we we don't have to take the entire 21, but I'd want to get it to like, you know, 70,000 or
Okay.
75,000 or something like that.
Okay, so I'll put 75 on that one.
The community scholarship ones, I go with your recommendation that you suggested on those.
Yep. And then the Leary is the other one.
Larry now.
Yeah, and the Leary one,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to get you, that's where all the money's would get to the 2.3 anyways, but,
Yep,
you know,
I have zero problem doing that.
okay. I mean, it's always the temptation, you want to preserve the fund, but at the same time, you know, there is going to be someone going through school right now who's not going to have the
Correct.
benefit that ends up
Yep.
getting the shortfall. So I would recommend we,
Bump those 5 scholarships. The
Right.
Demerit, the Leary, the Portsmouth Community Arts, Portsmouth Community Athletics, and Portsmouth Community Higher Ed.
right,
Okay,
okay.
all right.
So, subject to those amendments, do I hear a motion to approve these recommendations on scholarship amounts?
So moved.
Now, second.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call the roll call. We'll start with you, Dana.
I vote yes.
Peter?
Yes.
The chair votes yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Judy. It's a lot of work. Well
Yeah.
done.
All right, so next item is the Haven medals.
Does anyone need a copy of Susan?
Well, I did not print the revised that came in last.
Okay.
Okay.
I think you have the.
I do.
Yeah.
Judy, what was the change on the new one you sent? Because I wasn't able to get that.
That's a Tom question.
Yeah. So let me, I'll answer that question, but just to give you the methodology of what you see in front of you and how we got there. So you recall that at our last meeting, we had received an outline of what the school department wanted to do. But we all had some questions, but Brittany wasn't able to make the meeting, so we couldn't, clarify those. And, one, for instance, was the question as to whether the CTE students would be eligible for the General Excellence medals and stuff like that. And so, following our meeting and the meeting that Peter and I had with Susan, I reached out to Brittany, and we essentially went through, and I then took her answers along with that outline, and I converted it into what I've labeled here Exhibit A, which would be attached to the non-judicial settlement agreement, which is the next step after today. And I did it in this fashion because we could have simply incorporated these items into the settlement agreement, but that would result in a document which is, I think, just a burden on the school department to have to interpret on a regular basis, because it's going to have some history and that type of thing. So I wanted something that would be part of the settlement agreement, but could be separated, given to the school department, and when they're doing their things going forward. And so what you have is essentially the description of the qualifications for each of the 3 categories. The core fields of study, the CTE ones, which would be the new recipients, and then the general excellence, which is existing. And then the last section on other considerations addresses the desire to put flexibility in the process of changing these as educational philosophies change, without having to come back and go through this process again. And so Brittany has flown these by the superintendent, the principal, and others over at the school, and they've signed off on them as of yesterday afternoon. The last one that came in that resulted in what I called the hopefully final version was related to the general academic excellence under the eligibility criteria. The second item, which is the one that requires that the recipient have received an A grade in any core class or course, based on some emails that Brittany and I had, I misunderstood what she was suggesting with respect to CTE students, and she clarified that late in the day, so that's, I removed that. So that, the one you have in front of you, if you're looking at the old one, would have 5 dots under the criteria for general excellence. The one that we hopefully will approve is only going to have 4 dots.
Where are you looking?
Under,
On the old?
yeah, third page, under the criteria, the general academic excellence,
Yeah.
and then there's a criteria, eligibility criteria. The
Yeah.
first version you see there had 5 criteria, and there was the third one was substantially the same as the second, only it pertained to CTE students. You have the,
Yeah.
right? And as Brittany explained to me, there is not going to be a distinction between, CTE students and the regular curriculum students. They're all going to just be subject to the same criteria. So I removed the specific reference to CTE students in that particular criteria.
So which dots you eliminate?
So do you have one in front of you with 5 dots?
Yes.
All right, well, then it would be the third dot.
Okay.
It talks about if the recipient is a student enrolled in the CTE program.
Yeah.
That's the one.
I see that, but in the second dot, in
Well,
parentheses-
in the language in parentheses, that's been removed as well, because again, we're not going to have a distinction.
All right. Got it, thanks.
Okay. So, any further questions about this exhibit?
My only question is, Susan, have you had a chance to talk to the AG's office, and what ideas did they give you?
So I did speak with Marianne Dempsey yesterday for a while, and sort of gave her a thumbnail sketch of this memo you prepared about the history of the awards. And so she was concerned about the change right from the heirs from 1863 or whatever year, the 1862.
Yeah.
And noted that a lot of funds, scholarship funds, have gone through a Cypre process to add girls or to make that type of substantial change. So she was really focused on the very essence of the initial will, and his intent for academic excellence in what seemed to be Latin, Greek, math, like languages, foreign languages and math, and was concerned about expanding it substantially. So I think we're facing either going through a full Cypre or a non-judicial settlement. So she gave me some suggestions as to, more information that she would want to kind of assess that process, which I can share with you. Do
The
you have some
fact that
questions?
education has changed since 1850 isn't,
Well, but the education still would be languages and math. I think her take on it was the intent originally was for languages and math. I understand the broader concept, and I would agree it's academic excellence is sort of the overall intent, and times have changed substantially, but her concern was it was so limited initially that the expansion by the heirs, which has some, who knows what the legitimacy was of that at that time, because who knows what the actual laws applicable to all of this, existed in 1862. But so there's, that was a huge expansion by the heirs, which, if that was the original bequeath in the will, it might be easier to expand from, where it sat by what the heirs did. But she kept going back to the very original, will, and that it was fairly limited in the curriculum that he wanted to award honors for, medals for, not scholarships, but medals for. So I think we have some work to do. You got me up early and I got here, but no contacts in, so I'm half blind this morning. So bear with me.
Get to the club.
Even with my contacts, I'm sometimes have problems, but now this morning I can't see a thing. So she really was interested in what the practice has been for over the last 20 to 50 years. She wanted to know what the current proposal is, and obviously you have that with Exhibit A. And it's far expanded from the original intent and what she would look at as the original intent. I mean, the unanticipated circumstances, obviously it's the expansion of education in over a substantial period of time here. And her only other comments were, why not terminate the fund and just use the money as the school desires? That's another option available, apparently. But there does seem to be, we have some work to do to satisfy their concerns about the expansion.
Technically, could it be rolled into like one of the Portsmouth community funds? I'm just asking the question. I'm just curious.
I don't know.
But I think we'd be gone beyond the purposes
Yeah.
of Mr. Haven if you could tell this is not intended to be a scholarship.
Right. It's just for a medals program. Yeah.
To reward students. I don't know what the law was in 1862, but I'd be hard pressed to believe that any judge would say we got to go back and unwrap the 1862 program. I think the answer will be, as I promised when we met last week, I've started and I'm getting close to having a draft of the non-judicial settlement agreement. It will have the whole history laid out in it. If we approve this, I'll add this to it, and then I think we'll get it to you, and you can just present it to her. If she has concerns about it, maybe we ought to set up a conference call or something so we can walk through it. And then if she still thinks it's of an issue, then maybe we have to go the Cypre route. It would be. So one of the problems is if we had to go back to the 1840s, they don't teach Greek anymore and they don't teach Latin anymore.
Right.
So now you're down to just math. You could just have one medal.
Or languages. You might be able to put it into that category. I'm not sure what they're teaching for languages, Spanish, French. I don't know what else they're
teaching. The other thing I think you'd find is that, again, this is speculative because I can't firmly state it, but I would think that in 1842 you didn't have a lot of courses. You had reading, writing, and arithmetic, so to speak, and
the classics.
But I understand her concerns. It seems to be a different approach than her predecessors have taken, but It is what it is, so,
Well, maybe when she sees it all.
Can you explain what cypre process would be?
yeah, sure. Well, cypre is just another Latin term, but it's before they enacted this statute that allows for non-judicial settlement agreements. If you wanted to change some type of a trust, a scholarship, or any trust, you had to get judicial approval. And that meant that the parties, or one of the parties, would file an action in the probate court and say the purposes of the trust no longer apply, whatever the reason is, and you ask that the purposes or the what the trust allows to happen, whatever you want to change, you ask a judge to approve it. It's technically an adversarial action because it's commenced by one party, the other parties have to be served, and then, but over the years, typically what happened is they're settled in front of a judge by agreement of all the parties. And so when they enacted this alternative, it was intended to short circuit having to go through expensive litigation. And if you can get all the parties to the table in agreement on something that would be approved, it was in front of a judge, they're saying you don't have to do that, you just have to incorporate the AG's office in the approval process, and it can be just done as we've done on a number of other ones. So, you know, my guess is we would still get what we're requesting, but it, you know, as I said, it's adversarial. It has to be published in case there are some people out there who, you know, would be potentially impacted by it. I mean, it's a whole lawsuit. So
Yeah, and it has to go through the court.
yeah.
And then you're on court time.
So, and the adversary in this case is the state charitable division of trust.
Yeah, well, you know, I hate to use the term adversary, but it's only because the court system is designed as an adversarial process. You have to name other parties. So, you know, it's not doing it with the Haven one where the gentleman has been dead for 180 years is different than if somebody set up, you know, a scholarship and was still alive and the city wanted to change that scholarship, then we would have to name the person who set it up as a party along with the AG's office, et cetera. And remember, the AG's office is really meant to protect the public and unknown people out there, so in many cases, they're the only other party to the proceeding.
Judy, currently, what is there's a discrepancy on who's going to award the medals? Didn't it come up that Brittany mentioned it last time we met? The supplier of the medals.
Yeah, so the issue there is that because if this was approved, it would expand the number of medals.
Yeah.
Although not as much as we anticipate, because it turns out that last year they gave one for Latin. Now they can't do that anymore. But she contacted I think it's a jeweler or someone who does the medals. There are dies that were created, 100 years ago, and she was asking him, how much extra will it cost, and so he said that, well, it's funny you called because I think he's ready to wind down his business, and he says, the cost of these medals has exceeded the monies that have been received from the trust for several years. I've just absorbed the difference as a contribution to the community, but I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to be around to do these anymore.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons I put in here that the medals will be silver unless there isn't enough money, in which case the school could choose what kind of medal they want to give. So, the answer, thinking this thing forward, if this is accomplished, and maybe even if it wasn't, I think there may need to be some effort to put some contribution from alumni or something to get this fund up
Yep.
enough. I mean, it only has 6,000 or 7,000. Keep in mind that it started with an $800 donation in 1842, so that tells you about the cost
Tom,
of living.
can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
And I think you did a magnificent job on this, moving this ball forward. Under career technical education, we have it specified 2 months to be awarded.
Yes.
My only suggestion would be a minimum of 2 medals, because there might be in the future, if this all goes forward, if we would like, and he's funded, they might want to award 1 in each discipline in the CTE field.
Well, so, I did what Brittany said the school wanted to do, which was 2 medals.
Well, a minimum of 2 wouldn't preclude just 2.
Well, but, so I actually anticipated what you are suggesting. If you look in the other considerations, where number 4, where it says if the school department elects to reduce or increase the number of fields, that, no, actually, I guess I didn't address it, but yeah. Well, I'll do that. I got to go back and negotiate that with Brittany again, so.
Okay.
I
mean, we're obviously trying to make this a forward-thinking document that takes in any eventuality. I think that would help.
All right, well, so let me think of this thing through. So if I was to take number 4 under the other considerations in, I was to amend that to say that the school department may enlarge the number of CT medals in the future. Would that solve it? Maybe say, it may, but it's not required to, something like that?
On number 4, you can do the language, but at the end it says study of one of the 2 CTE medals.
No, but what I'm saying is, if I was to add a sentence on there which would say that, or a separate number, but in essence say that if the, at any time in the future, the department may, increase or decrease the number of medals awarded to CTE students or programs.
Yeah, I mean, whatever works for you.
But does that language satisfy your concern?
I think it would.
Okay, how do you feel about that, Peter?
That's fine. But I would suggest we get together with Brittany again.
Okay, for purposes of modifying this, or?
Well, just to make sure that we've covered everything.
Okay, all right. You want us to bring her in next month, is that what you're saying?
Well, either that or you and I want to go to the high school sometime and talk with her.
Yeah, I kind of feel like she's the messenger for the department as opposed to the decision maker, so.
We'll find that out.
All right. Okay, so my only concern with that is I think that will hold us up going to the AG's office until we know.
Well, we could, I think you could do it at the same time. I'm not saying hold it up for a month.
Well, my understanding is whatever we present to them should include the final current proposal.
Yeah.
So if you're going to modify this, I would suggest you do that before we make a submission rather than remodify, adjust it after. We just give them one current proposal.
I don't want the AG's office to feel that, we're a moving target.
You don't want them to feel like they've wasted their time and they have to start over.
So, okay, so what I'm going to suggest then is that I'll propose that we adopt this subject to adding in the language to satisfy Dana's concern. And that and then this will serve as the attachment to the settlement agreement. I'll make sure that change is okay with Brittany. I will ask her if she thinks it's worthwhile to meet with just Brittany or with other members as well, and try to schedule something in the next week.
Yeah. I'll make myself available.
Okay. And then I will, I guess I'll finalize, but I won't, I'll send it to you for review, but let's not submit it until after Peter and I have had
Right.
a meeting with them. And if she wants something, then I guess we'll need to, wait till the next meeting of trustees to sign off on it.
So while you're meeting at the high school, can I suggest, I don't know who over there has sort of the institutional knowledge
Nobody.
that would cover the last 20 to 50 years?
So this is,
I assume you've already asked, but
well, yeah, and so I have like 3 documents. One is the list of people who received the medals this year. The one in 22, and there was a memo that was done in 2019. The department claims that it doesn't have old records relating to these. I mean, I'm sure there's, you could probably look in newspapers and come up with who got the awards periodically, but they were markedly thin in their file history of when these changed,
how it evolved.
how it evolved.
That-
And frankly, that's why we ended up doing this deep dive that came up with the 1862. I mean, we knew what what was in the will, but we didn't have any idea about the 1862 thing.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure we're going to get anything further. In fact, if I ask Brittany, she's going to say, no, I've already looked for it twice based on your request.
So maybe we can just address whatever the 2019 memo says and whatever was awarded that we know of in the last couple of years. You also reference an article from 1963?
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't think I had that.
I
but-
can send you an electronic version of that.
Yeah.
That's Ray Brighton. So Ray Brighton was a columnist for the Herald for like 30 years or something. And he did a lot of sort of history columns. And so he actually gave us the lead on the selectmen's decision in '62 because his article
Because he had referenced that, yeah.
talks about it. So
That's great.
I'll send the electronic version of that.
Okay. So I think we could put the packet together fairly quickly. As soon as you finalize the Exhibit A here for the current practice. And hopefully it won't take too long.
Yep.
If they look at it and they still feel like it has to go through Cypre, one of the issues that she raised, and maybe it's just, she's on a learning curve in her new position there, but a lot of municipalities, towns have had to go through Cypre when they've added girls to the scholarships that weren't originally named for girls. So that is one thing that stood out to her, and I think along with that and adding to the whole program the way it was done under whatever legal framework existed in 1862 being so dubious, it might be the best way to just secure this program officially with no questions asked if it goes through the formal process.
I understand.
Yeah.
I
We can hopefully talk her out of that. And
So if there was only because I got to think that, an agreement with the heirs and the executor of Mr. Havens' estate to do these things.
actually qualifies as a Cypre, really.
Is the equivalent of a settlement. If we tried to do that, last year, I think it'd be a problem, but, 160 years ago,
Right.
Plus, I think if you look at the votes, in the material I sent you, one of the things that the heirs had asked is that the city contribute money into then town contribute money into the fund to sort of make up. And so there was some monies contributed by the town on the assumption that it was going to have expanded criteria and include girls. So
I think if we lay all that out, it might be helpful and persuade her.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, let's do that then. So the game plan will be it's subject to the change suggested by Dana. Let's vote on to approve this draft to go into the non-judicial settlement agreement. I will then finalize that for the city attorney's review and approval. In the interim, Peter and I will try to set something up with Brittany, or at least offer her the opportunity if she thinks it's worthwhile. And then if we don't have anything additional, we'll submit the package to the AG and begin that process. I think we'll do it with the idea that she probably will want some changes in it anyways, even if she agrees with the process. They almost always want little things involved.
Yeah.
So it will come back to us for final approval before it's signed, and then anything that is necessary can be cleaned up at that point. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to proceed on that basis.
So move.
Second.
All right, we'll call a roll call. We'll start with you, Dana.
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you. This thing is absorbing more time for a $6,000 fund. All right, so next item is, I put on here the Public Housing Trust Fund. I don't have anything for everybody to look at. This is a new fund. Susan can speak to it if you like. But the city council has a housing policy that has been around for several years. They're now looking to fund, create a fund that will offer financial support of those housing principles, tied into the recent change in a zoning ordinance that will allow for developers to make a financial contribution on a housing project in lieu of having to actually put workforce housing units in the development. And so when Peter and I met with Susan last week, we discussed this in addition to Haven Metals. And so just going to tell you that will be coming up probably by our next meeting, and you're welcome to add to that, or?
Sure. So, just for background, Dana, I'm not sure if you're following all the news, but first of all, there is currently a City of Portsmouth Workforce Housing Trust Fund, and it was established in 2009, but no money was ever deposited. So there's no corpus for this trust, and it is the recitals and the purposes are dated. So the new Blue Ribbon Housing Committee has been looking at various ways to encourage workforce housing, or the other terms are affordable housing or below market rate housing in the city. And as part of our negotiated settlement with the Kane Company on the McIntyre litigation, there is a proposal that as part of that settlement, the city and Michael Kane will each deposit $250,000 into a housing trust. So that money won't be deposited for another couple of months, given the timelines in the settlement agreements, but it does appear that that is all going forward without any issues and will actually happen. So we need to update or revise or just write a new trust from this 2009 trust. So that's where we're at. Since 2009, there was a policy that was adopted in, I think, 2016 for the City Council in regards to their desire to provide more affordable housing, and the establishment of this Blue Ribbon Committee is another indication. It's one of their number one goals of this City Council, provide more affordable housing, workforce housing. So the idea is to have a new trust established that works out in a timely manner so that it's established and available for monies to be deposited into the fund in February. But I'd ask for some guidance in terms of getting the purposes correct so that we give the right guidance to all of you, to the trustees, to make sure that what we write is what is intended and what's clear for you to administer this fund.
So who's the beneficiaries of this trust?
Well, essentially, the idea is that the city would direct disbursements of the fund, and it would come through a city council vote, but it would be directed potentially to city projects, to private projects, to possibly individuals. That's one of the challenges in writing this.
Development of projects, acquisition of land, acquisition of property, or direct funds to occupants?
Well, so far, my draft covers all of those. And I'm trying to narrow it down and make it as clear as I can. But in our zoning ordinances, we have incentives. So if somebody wants to build something, a taller building or a more dense building, have more units in it, then the incentive is you can do that, but you need to provide workforce housing. And a lot of times in the process of that, there are issues in terms of the development and being able to afford to put the workforce housing in, is what we're hearing from the private sector, given the expense of materials and construction these days and the requirements of their capital investors. So there's that potential. There's a potential for the city to purchase property. The city is anticipating acquiring another lot of property as part of the McIntyre settlement as well, and that would be all for affordable housing. So we'd need to get a development partner and have money available to fund that process. And the other aspect of workforce housing is that it requires ongoing management, because the criteria to get the workforce housing tax credits involves monitoring the people who are living there and that they still qualify, whether it's a 60 or 80% of the AMI, the average medium income, however you define that workforce housing, affordable housing group. So the period of time that they're living in that workforce housing, they have to stay within that income requirement to be able to continue to stay there, and that requires ongoing management and supervision. So that is an expense of affordable housing. It's not a simple process, and which is why all across the country, everyone is challenged, all the municipalities are challenged with trying to find ways to incentivize workforce housing and to get more housing units developed. And so the idea of the housing trust would be to address a number of those issues and then see how it comes, but it would come through a request that would go to the city manager and then to the city council to say, yes, we approve this as an expense for the trust, and to give you as trustees that direction.
You also have in there purchase and rehabilitate housing. So
Correct.
that if you have some rundown housing, the trust could be, funds from the trust could be used.
Right.
Has the city council appropriated their money?
It's available. They don't have to do an appropriation for it. So there are funds available to fund the Housing Trust Fund.
So would it ever be anticipated in some of the, if a public-private partnership development agreement came about, the city would take an equity interest?
I don't think anyone's gotten that sophisticated in their thought process, and right now we're doing the Sherburne School development with the Portsmouth Housing Authority, and of course the city's not looking for any income or equity out of that. But down the road, let's say the new parcel of land that's coming to the city from the McIntyre settlement, that in that development, I'm not sure, who we would get as a development partner, if that would be PHA or if it's another partner. There is a potential for income down the road. But I think in order to get affordable housing units built, one of the issues is that the income stream is very low. And so I think the city, in order to meet their goals of getting more affordable housing, is probably not going to become an equity partner. But that'll be a big decision down the road.
Is it safe to assume when the city writes the check for $250,000 It'll come to the trustees for deposit, and it'll come with a council vote authorizing that expenditure.
Yes. For the expenditure of the funds to the housing trust?
Right.
Yes, yes, of course. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. The city will authorize entering into the final version of the trust. That's a given. Now, when Kane Group decides to make their contribution under their settlement agreement, that money will probably come directly to us from the Kane Group. There might not be a city council authorization with that, other than having signed a settlement agreement, so.
I asked the question, do we have the money? And the answer was yes, but I just want to make sure that we have all our T's crossed and I's dotted.
We do. We do. I cannot give you the A to Z on the finance and funds, but yes, there is money there, and there was money appropriated along the way throughout this long saga for attorney's fees and other costs and expenses. But I do know from our finance director that there is money available. So to actually go forward with this settlement agreement. So it is on a timeline. So once certain things happen, then it's within 30 to 60 days that the money would go into the trust. So the goal is to get something drafted, and I know that Tom raised a question of the most of these trusts, and the very end paragraph talks about how it can be rescinded if it were to cease to exist, and that there would be some concern if you had public money and private money commingled in the trust, what would happen in that event if there were still money in the trust at whatever time it was determined that the city wanted to dissolve the trust, how that would be handled. And I don't think I've gotten to an answer on that question, but.
Yeah, somewhat related to that would be if the city was simply making its own contribution, to support its own efforts, that's one thing. But when it accepts money from a developer, either pursuant to a zoning, approval or otherwise, then I just would be concerned about the ability of the city to simply say, well, we're not going to pursue housing anymore because we've got too much housing.
If we ever got to that point, that'd be great. And I guess that's the one point that I didn't necessarily explain completely, is that in our new zoning ordinance for the Gateway Overlay Neighborhood District, there is a provision that in lieu of the workforce housing requirements, if you want the incentive to have more density, but you don't want to put workforce housing in, there is a payment in lieu provision in that ordinance. So we'll be going to the fee committee and the housing committee to establish how to calculate that fee. A number of municipalities do have this type of fee that they charge, but it's anticipated that the money from that payment in lieu would also eventually go into the housing trust. And it might be a matter of semantics. The payment in lieu is to the city, and then it's deposited into the trust. So is it developer money or city money?
I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I don't either. That's kind of a question. And even the McIntyre settlement, I anticipate, I'm not sure how the check will be written, to the city or to the city housing trust, so
I reckon.
those are a few of the issues we need to address.
Is this very similar to the fee that used to be able to pay by a developer in lieu of creating any parking spaces?
I don't know.
That was
I don't
before
know.
her time, but I think it's essentially the same.
Well, that's what I'm,
Yeah.
Suzanne did mention to me that it's
It would be similar,
similar to that.
yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of work ahead, but it's coming to you. So the process I anticipate is the Housing Committee will finalize the trust, go to the Housing Committee, and then go to the City Council, come to you for review before it gets adopted
Okay.
finally.
All right, well, we'll continue to work with you, and then we'll have something come back to us for approval. All right, so next to the library trust disbursement.
And if you don't need me, may I be excused?
Well, actually, okay, so let me, if you could, do you have time?
Oh, yeah, I do. Okay.
Because I got a couple quick items after we
All right.
get through the next two items. Do you have spreadsheets?
I do.
On the larger paper?
Yes, I do.
Let me just check.
Tom, will you put in next year's budget magnifying glasses or,
That's right.
you know?
We're all going to have big screens in front of us, so we can, wow.
It's almost impossible to print those out in large print.
You can't,
The Excel spreadsheets.
home
yeah.
printers won't print them.
All right, so this is, these are the proposed disbursements from the various library.
Correct.
Trust account that we
Correct,
have.
for, based off of the filings on June 30th, 2024. If you look at the very bottom of the page, you can see there's 7 trusts there. The amount is based on just income. So there's, the first line is your investment income, second line is minus the TD fees. So your bottom line investment number, income number that can be paid out is your net. So if you look at the Common Trust 1, which is the very first one, the amount that's available to be paid out is $2,312.60. And that's more than the previous year award. I do have that number down below, just so you can see the difference. In 2023, we paid out $1,853. So it's a little bit more this year because of how the funds had performed. So that's done across for every one of the trusts. Again, as always, the Levison Trust, I don't have a check for that because that's how the trust is written, is based on, it's used for programming, correct, Dana? So, yeah, so if the library decides to have some kind of a programming event, they can come in and request that money at that time, but we don't write a check for it in advance.
So that's why it's in green and not in
Correct.
yellow.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's, those are the proposed funds.
I would move to allow the transfer to the library, the amount of $18,808.72.
It's actually, okay.
Is that not right?
Well, it's that amount less the 730 because I'm not cutting a check for that amount.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
The green is still included in the yellow?
yeah, it is. It's just the way it tallied across.
Less the 730.45.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do I hear a second to that?
Second, do you do this annually or?
Once a year. Yeah,
Once a year?
yeah.
Okay. All right. Any further discussions on the proposal? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Start with you, Peter.
Yes.
Dana?
I vote yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right. Progress. Okay, so next item is a TD Wealth Management
Yeah.
investment reports. Those were distributed. I assume you've all had a chance to look at those. So any questions concerning the dashboard?
It was not a good month.
It was not a good month.
No, it not a good month, but it was a good year.
It was.
So then I'll move on to that, and I assume you've had a chance to look at Judy's reports, but if Judy, you want to add anything to those?
Yeah, it's basically just, expanded from the dashboard. You've got your, the monthly graph, and then the month-to-month, from December of last year to December of this year, activity overall. And then, which this month we had a 2.79% decrease from November to December. And then, the big one is just, year-to-date, continuing on. There were no disbursements this past month out of the funds, so it's pretty straightforward this month.
Okay.
When will we be making our first disbursement on
But I'll be, the next meeting, I'll be coming in with the disbursements for
Prescott Park?
Prescott Park, the marine maintenance portion of the budget pay-in, and also the marine maintenance trust loan payback. Those will all be coming in February.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Any questions concerning Judy's summaries? Yep. Good job as always. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so you can actually start circulating checks. A couple items I wanted to update you on because literally they are fresh off the press. So yesterday, Brittany contacted me or emailed me to let me know that the Coalhouse people are ready to move forward with creating a new trust arrangement to support the CTE program. And she wanted to know next steps, and you recall that when she was in meeting with us a few months ago, we explained that when they were ready to move forward and they had thought through their criteria a little more, that it would be time to meet with legal on that. So I'm going to send to you,
Okay.
I'll give you right now.
Are they going for a name scholarship?
Yes.
Yes. I will, I'll email this to you, Dana.
All right, thank you.
There's that. You received
one
this
for
already?
I have it. You copied me on it. Yeah.
And I will, I'll give to you, this is what they gave us when we spoke with them. See, there is a scholarships of sorts right now, but it doesn't really have a scholarship document. This is just something set up by Mr. Colas, who is in the plumbing trade, right?
Correct.
And so he has been supporting these efforts, and now he wants to formalize it, and you'll see from the email, he thinks that they'll have about $28,000 for initial funding to get this off the ground, so I'll give you that.
That's awesome.
Related as well. And then, totally separate from that, I got an email from Brittany saying that Cynthia Keenan, who is Mary Keenan's daughter, wants to set up a scholarship in her mom's name. And I'll share that with you as well. And at very beginning stages, but they want to make an initial contribution of $10,000. I think they're hoping that they can raise enough monies to have a perpetual one, which, as you know, is a $25,000 cutoff. But it's just, and I'll send you this as well, Dana. So the next stage on this one would either be to let Susan or someone from her department contact Cynthia, or unless you want to have Cynthia come in and talk to us.
I'm happy to get the ball rolling, make the
Okay.
initial call
All right.
and report
So-
back.
All right, I will, why don't you do that then?
Okay.
I'm going to send you, in 2019, we adopted scholarship policies.
Oh, yeah,
And
perfect.
so we've set it up so there are like 3 tiers. We had determined that in order to generate even a minimum, like $250 annual scholarship, we had to have a $25,000 corpus.
Well, yeah,
And so we said, if you want to have a perpetual scholarship, we're going to require $25,000, and then there are certain other requirements as well. And then we said, if you wanted to have what we call a sunset one, which would be, you can have a named scholarship, but if it, and we'll give you 3 years to come up with, if you only get like 15,000, we'll give you 3 years to come up with that additional monies to get to 25. But if you either don't anticipate you'll get there in 3 years or don't want to try to raise that kind of money, then you can have a named scholarship which will sunset by, you agree on how much principal and interest will be given every year. So you could say $1,000 a year or something like that for a scholarship. And then once that fund is expended, it disappears. And then the other one is we just encourage people to make a contribution into one of the community scholarships that we set up back in 2019. Without getting too far into it, we had 50 some odd scholarships at one point. 20 of them were very minimal, that some guys went back again to the 1850s, that weren't able to
pay out.
give out any, they gave a scholarship every 3, 4, 5, 6 years type of thing. So we went through the process of getting the AG's office to sign on to a non-judicial settlement agreement and combined all those into the 5 community funds that you've heard us mention earlier.
right,
So-
yep.
so,
I've heard
but
some
I'll
of
get you
that.
that policy because when you talk to Cynthia, she'll want to
Know
figure out
which
which one of those she
process,
wants to
yeah,
do, so.
right. That
But
sounds good.
I thought that was actually pretty interesting and exciting, so. So a couple, just anticipating next February meeting, we have John DeQuattro will be speaking to us via Zoom, giving us his quarterly update.
Correct.
We also, at that point, should look at our investment policy. We're supposed to look at them every year, every 2 years, and so I assume you have one, but I'll have Judy send you out a copy of it and look at it. Normally, we ask John every quarter, does he think we ought to make any changes to the actual investments or the 75-25 division. But you recall when we put this latest version together, he helped us, make selections in terms of overall investments and categories. So I would like to do this because I think we need to, as I said, do this every year. So we'll ask him to comment on those as well. But if you could look at that, and if you have any thoughts of something we ought to do or thoughts that we ought to ask him, just have those ready. And then the other item I'm going to have Judy put on the agenda is the Hodgkins Memorial Fund.
Yeah.
So you recall that we discussed this briefly. When you sent that out, did you send it to the other guys?
I sent it to everyone.
Okay,
yes.
all right. So if you read the materials that she sent out a couple of days ago, you can see that this was originally set up by Phyllis Hodgkins in her will in the 90s, and it was intended to fund a lecture plus visuals, primarily on travel, but also on history. It was conducted by a family member until 2013, and then Mr. Hodgson says, I just can't do it anymore, and my brother doesn't want to do it, and my sister's not around anymore, and my son doesn't want, so there is no Hodgsons left, and so that money has just been sitting there. I'd like you to give some thought to it. I'd like us, I think we should be doing something with that money, so I'd like to suggest that we invite the library to consider putting on those travels. All they really care about is that they'd be open and available to public. They used to be at the high school, but they can be anywhere, and I don't think we're qualified to actually conduct them, and I think the library is in the business of putting great programs on, so I think this would be a win-win situation. So I'd like to have that conversation.
She was a longtime art teacher
Yeah.
at the Portsmouth Schools Department.
Right.
Do you want Christine to come to the next meeting, or do you want to just discuss it with you first and then?
I will reach out to Christine and just have the conversation. If she's not interested,
Perfect.
then we'll come back and we'll decide on alternative steps. Maybe we have to
Perfect.
make a, publish
Okay.
something or invite RFP type of thing, but
Okay.
we ought to get that money. The money is quite extraordinary now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like, what is it, $700,000 or something?
Yeah.
Tom, is Susan in the loop on the discussion we had about the library trustees and the funds and the trust they manage as opposed to the library trust funds that are under the trustees of the trust funds?
Are you in the loop on that?
I am not in the loop on that.
So the answer is no, but you'll recall that when we met with Christine a month or 2 months ago, that we discussed our concerns about whether we could, and just for clarification, so the library has its own trust, and there's the state statute allows for donations to be made directly to the library, or they could be made to the city or the trustees for the benefit of the library. And if they're the latter, they come to us, and that's what you just saw us vote on, disbursements. But the library trustees also have, a half dozen or some amount, a much smaller sum of money that they manage. Because that money is so small, it doesn't have the benefit of the management results that we have. And so that periodically, and most recently a couple months ago, the library director asked what the opportunity would be for us to take their monies as part of our management. And so we raised the issue of whether the law even allows us to do that.
Oh, yep.
And so before we came to you, we asked Christine to go back and think about whether she really wanted to pursue this or not. And we haven't heard from her. So, but
She was going to check with her trustees
Yeah, but I was gonna say,
to
yeah.
see if they
Yeah.
had any interest.
yeah.
Correct.
So that's why I haven't heard from us yet, but if they come forward, then we'll sit down with you, and the issue really is whether the state statutes would allow us to take over the management of monies that originally went to the library trustees. But I don't want you to put another thing on your plate. You don't have to do it. So,
Every day there's a lot added to the plate.
all right, so those are just a couple of the things to look forward to in the February meeting. And other than that, anything else other than signed checks?
No, just, I'll get this after,
Yeah, I was going to say, okay. And there's nobody from the public, so we won't expect any public comment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I move we adjourn. Second.
All right, all in favor? Peter?
Yes.
Dana?
I vote yes.
The chair votes yes, and we made it before 9 o'clock.